Okay, there are many different ways you can mix down a track and add different audio elements like compressions, chain EQs, Averb, buses, and automation. And this video will explain how I use some of them and chose them and why I did what I did with them. Okay, one of the first things I used was the EQs. I didn't use it on all of the tracks because it kind of sounded alright to me as it was. So you'd take one of your channels, you'd go to Inserts, you go to EQs, and you could choose any of these EQs, either on channel EQ. Another way you can get channel EQ up is by double clicking the EQ right there, and then you would what I did was solo a track, play it, and then you can change all the different EQs about it. You can go quite in depth with different frequency ranges. You've also got a high pass and low pass filter. So if I was to put that on, you could then basically cut out a lot of high end, or you could cut out all the low end. What I usually like to do with it is I would turn on my analyzer and go to high resolution so I could see all the different frequencies being used quite in depth. Then I can go quite in depth into one of them, which I think would be quite good. So say for the vocals here, yep, there's the vocals. Yeah. If I were to turn that off, you can hear quite a bit of difference in it. Another thing that I used was compressions. So take the keyboard for example. Keyboard. Yep. Point to the keyboard. You use the compressor. If I were to bypass it, then unbypass it, you can hear quite a difference in the sound of it and the actual overall volume. I'm not quite sure on what everything does with it. What I did was just play about with it until it sounded quite nice to me. To get to the compressor, you'd go to Inserts, Dynamics, and then go for the compressor. Other things you can do is pan. I did this with these two vocals because to me they kind of clashed. When they weren't panned, so if I put them in the middle. They kind of clash when they are together. Things that I did use was reverb. The reason I used Space Designer in particular was because it was quite good for designing rooms and stuff like, well, different types of rooms. I used the preset for Warm Club, which I thought had quite a nice sound to it, which you can get from the presets menu by clicking on it, going to small spaces, indoor spaces, and going down to Warm Club. It's had quite a small amount of reverb and sounded quite warm, well, had a warm sound to it anyway. The reason I used presets for this was because, again, I'm not exactly sure on every single thing to do with the plugins, but I'm still get used to them. And again, I thought Warm Club had quite a nice sound to it. I also used Averb for the keyboards because Averb is really simple to use. My mouse decided to stop working. But yeah, with Averb you can change the size of the room, the actual mix to it, and the pre-delay, and the amount of time it takes, which I thought was pretty useful. And I only wanted to add a really small amount of reverb to it. And since Averb is really simple to use, I can just use it slightly to touch stuff up. So yeah, without this, that's what it would sound like. With sounds like that. Not a lot of difference, but it kind of helped when I was using headphones for it as well. For the drums, I sent them all to one bus 10, and then on the auxiliary strip that was made for the bus 10, I added Space Designer again, put it on Warm Club. The reason I chose the same presets for all of my Space Designers was because the audio would sound kind of weird if they all had different amounts of reverb, because it would sound like they were all recorded in different rooms, which I thought wouldn't go too well. To send them to a bus, you'd highlight them. Yeah, you'd highlight them all or individually. I highlight them all because it just saves time when doing the actual busing. To send them, you'd click on one of the send icons, go to the bus, and then you'd click the bus you wanted. Then you'd get the style come up next to the bus, and you can choose the amount of the sound that you send to the auxiliary strip made for it. Another thing I used was automation. You can get that by just pressing A on your keyboard and it would come up. To draw them in, you'd press Escape 2. You'd press Escape 2 for the pencil tool, and you can draw in separate points, which was kind of useful if you just want to get in depth and make it really sharp to go into there instead of having to quickly jump the volume. The reason I used automation like on parts like this was because, take here for example, if you were to play it. Oops. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. If you were to play it, you can hear the rest of the instruments naturally get louder. And if I were to turn off those, if I were to turn down the vocals, they would kind of get overpowered by the rest of the instruments and you wouldn't be able to hear them with much clarity. And yeah, another way you can do automation is by recording it in. So yeah, from here, if I were to use Latch, I can change it and it would stay exactly where it is. If I were to change it to Touch, would jump straight back to its original position. And right, I didn't use, considering it would overwrite everything I've done previously for the track. And reading is mainly where it's reading the automation when you're bouncing it down, I think. I'm not too sure. But yeah, that explains all the different processes I used for the track.